Hey guys, welcome back. I'm thinking that I'm going to do part two, so let's just go ahead and get right into it. So we left off last time with me losing her and the whole trauma of that, obviously. Basically after that, they kept me pretty much out of it for, I'm going to say 24 hours, and they let me go home. Now, after a C-section, they normally keep you in the hospital for 3 days, but for some reason, they let me go home. Couldn't tell you why, they just sent me home. So I get home, and someone I love very dearly that night ended up having to go to the hospital. So that was pretty horrible. I went to the hospital with them, and while we were there, my legs like swelled up completely. They were huge. Like, I can't even describe to you how big my legs were. And my husband and I said, let's go up to labor and delivery and just get you checked out. And they said that they couldn't see me. So after everything that just happened, they would not treat me. So we went home and we spent the better part of the week, well, not the better part, but most of the week, planning her funeral, which was going to be that Sunday. And we did that all week. And then Tez had actually just got a new job, so we had to drive out about an hour away to go to that interview and do everything for that. So it was a pretty stressful week. And I had a nurse coming in just to check on me and make sure my incision was good and all that good stuff. And everything seemed to be fine. My blood pressure was a little high, but nothing terrible. So I went home on Monday. So Thursday comes around, and I've been going through this all week, and it hadn't really hit me yet. But Thursday comes around, Thursday morning, and my dad's going to take me out shopping to get me a dress to wear to her funeral. And I said, you know what, let me just check my blood pressure before we go, just to make sure that I'm good. And my blood pressure was 188 on 131, which is extremely high. So my dad called the nurse, and within 30 seconds, he was rushing me to the hospital. They had me hooked up to all kinds of monitors. They had 2 IVs in my arms, and they could not understand what was happening. I kept asking them if I was going to die, and they couldn't answer me. So, God, sorry, this is horrible to remember because I'm still dealing with these issues now, but I'll get into that later. They had the IVs in my arms. I asked them if I was going to die. They wouldn't answer me. I had 7 doctors, like not nurses, doctors around my bed trying to figure out what was going on. My blood pressure reached 235 over 171, and that's like past a stroke. And I wasn't feeling much of anything. Like, I was dizzy, but the normal symptoms that you would get with having a stroke or heart attack, I wasn't experiencing those at all. So I don't really know what to look for, and that's why it scares me so much today. So they said this is either going to work or it isn't. And the one doctor put, what was it? I forget what it was, but he put it in my IV, and my blood pressure started to come down. So they put the paddles on my bed, and they rushed me to ICU. I spent the next week and a half in ICU. They would not, my family, like, don't get me wrong, my dad was my absolute rock through that whole week. Through pretty much everything that happened with Rory, my dad was the best person. He's my best friend, and he got me through it, but they wouldn't cancel the funeral so that I could go because I wasn't allowed out of ICU, because they still thought that I was going to die. So Ted said, you know what, if you can't go, I'm not going to go either. And they had the funeral without us. On the Monday, they brought Rory to the hospital, and in the church there, they recreated the funeral for me. And they wheeled me down in a wheelchair. They had me on all kinds of medication to make sure that my stress wouldn't go up, because we couldn't afford for my blood pressure to spike. I wasn't even allowed out of bed that whole week. So it was really, really stressed to me that you cannot get upset. And how do you not get upset at your daughter's funeral? So we did that, and then they let me out. Now, to give you a little bit of backstory, my whole pregnancy with Rory was very rough. I didn't get out of bed. I had to take a sick leave from work. And all I ate the entire pregnancy was baked potato with sour cream and chives from Wendy's. Like, that's the only thing that I could stomach. I couldn't eat anything else. I couldn't drink anything except for water and Gatorade. I think I had freezies sometimes, but I would get these horrible pains in my stomach. And these pains were like crippling. So I get home. I'm home for 4 days, and I am in excruciating pain. Like, excruciating. And I had been in this pain my whole pregnancy, and I had been to the hospital because of this pain, and they didn't do anything. They just said it's probably just heartburn or gas or something. We can't do anything for it, and they would send me home. And I went to the hospital probably 7 or 8 times during my pregnancy with Rory for this exact problem. So we went to the hospital. My mom rushed me to the hospital on that Thursday. Thursdays are not good days for me, apparently. Thursday morning, around 4 o'clock in the morning, they rushed me to the hospital, my mom, and my blood pressure was up again because I was in agony. I mean, they sent me home on all kinds of medications, so I wasn't going back into whatever was going on with my blood pressure. So they put me in, like, the urgent emergency, and they ran all kinds of tests. And while I'm sitting there waiting, the man in the bed next to me passed away. And that was horrible. After losing my daughter, almost dying myself, being rushed to the hospital, and the man next to me almost is dying, and he died. I couldn't handle that, so they had to move me to another room, and they came back and said, Courtney, you have gallstones. You've had gallstones your whole pregnancy, and your pancreas is shutting down. So this is something that is going to kill you if we don't deal with it right now. So they admitted me. I spent another 2 weeks in the hospital. Absolutely. Just, that's when Rory hit me the most, is after I got into the hospital again. I spent the 2 weeks pretty much asleep. I told them it hurt when it didn't, so they would give me the medication, and it knocked me right out, and I slept the whole time. I didn't know how else to handle the loss of my daughter. So this is how I coped, and it's not by any means a way to cope, but it's the way that I did. I wasn't allowed to eat for 2 weeks. They had me on Jell-O after a week, and so after my pancreas got better, it started functioning again, they sent me home. Okay, so I'm home for a week, and then back in, and I have to have my gallbladder removed. So I had that surgery, and then I went back home. It was a day surgery. It wasn't horrible. I couldn't be alone. Like, nobody could leave me alone. So after all this is said and done, I'm home, and my anxiety, my depression, and everything is above anything. Like, I've almost died twice now. I've lost my daughter. A man died by me. Oh, and while I was in for the 2 weeks, the lady that shared the room with me died in our room as well. It was a horrible month for me. So we ended up going home, and they had me on so many medications, like crazy amount of medications. But because I wasn't dealing with Rory, I was so concerned with me dying. Like, I didn't deal with what happened to Rory. I focused on me. That was my way of coping after. I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna die. And what I would do is, the medications weren't working, and I would black out, and I would take the car in the morning, and Tez would not know where I went, and sometimes I would be on the side of the road, and I'd wake up there, and I had no idea how I got there, or I'd show up at my mom's, and it was horrible. Like, I don't remember doing any of that. I just remember waking up where I was. So I've almost died twice. I've had the surgery. I'm home. I'm going through all this post-traumatic stress, and I spent the better part of the next year, not the better, I don't know why I keep saying the better, because it wasn't good, but the next year was horrible, and I will get into that in part 3. Thank you for watching. Just subscribe before you leave if you want to keep up with the story. Make sure to share with people so that they know that they're not alone, and if they ever need somebody to talk to, they can always message me.